Sonny, welcome to the Medium Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It's good to do this.
I know it's been some time since we last spoke. A bit of staffing issues with Bubble 10 Australia. How are you feeling?
Good. Yeah, good. It's been, a great journey with heaps of ups and heaps of downs. But isn't that just the nature of any business or any endeavor that you do? Is just, things are going to come at you from all sorts of different angles, but, there's just the fun of it.
I love it. And I can see the healthy glow in the face. What has been sort of the biggest, most rewarding thing as a result of starting this new business? Feel free to tell us a bit more about it as well. How you sort of came up with the idea and how it sort of evolved. Yeah.
Well, it started from a fateful stargazing trip in New Zealand at a place called Lake Tekapo, which is known for its stargazing over there. And so went over there with an ex-partner of mine that she basically was looking after the itinerary as long as she was able to, plan for this stargazing experience. All I wanted to do was just be able to get into a motorhome and drive around the South Island.
Love it.
And she organized this night in May, and it just ended up being the most perfect night. Like we did a stargazing tour on Mount John Observatory, which is run by the Canterbury University, and that's where their telescopes are, I should say. And it was just the most amazing night. So it was new moon, not a cloud in the sky, no wind, and to top it all off, there was a meteor shower that night as well. So it was like 1 in 100 nights, and it was
that timed? Anyone? Did you know it was coming? Or
she worked her way. She was looking at precipitation levels, like when we were planning the whole trip, and she deserves the credit, but I'm sure there was a bit of luck involved as well, like any time with Mother Nature. But yeah, it was literally a life-changing experience, because that set off a whole cascading series of events where we wanted to replicate that experience that we had and the magic of it all. And it started off this whole fantasy of like, would it be amazing to sleep under the stars? Because in Lake Tekapo you couldn't actually sleep under the stars, which we were like, we wanted to do that straight after. We couldn't find any accommodation to do it, and so we were like, is there somewhere in Australia where we could do it? And it turns out there wasn't. And overseas, there was a couple of experiences that had fragments of what we had in our heads, but it just still wasn't the same thing. So we just actually wanted to get something for ourselves. But then when we actually, did a little bit more digging into it and what was required to set it up, it wasn't like going to Anaconda and grabbing a tent, and pitching it up in the middle of a field. It actually had a fair bit more that was just involved in it. And so, basically it began from there. And, like at the start, it was like, how the hell do we market this thing? We were doing all sorts of different promotions, and it just wasn't resonating. And then we were like, okay, well, maybe this is, was just meant to have been a hobby.
Which is okay.
Which is also okay. And but then just needed to try out a few different things, and started a bit of a promotional blitz, for lack of a better word.
I love the marketing jargon.
Managed to get some PR that way, and the rest is history. We were very lucky to have so far have 6 TV spots. From last count, we were published in 21 different countries that I was aware of, and it was just magnificent, But when we were very lucky to find an incredible spot just 3 hours northwest of Sydney that most people haven't heard of. So it's just, it's magic, and it's such a magical place to be at, and, be lucky enough to be able to do something like this.
How'd you find a spot?
Prospecting. So knew that we needed to have amazing views because, you know, Mother Nature is going to do its thing. So it's not just all about, as much as you'd love to see the stars all the time, even working observatories base their working schedules effectively on being able to work 2 out of 3 nights if they're lucky.
Yep.
But weather is just going to do its own thing, right? So knew that views and an experience during the day was going to be as important as clear and dark skies at night, which kind of narrowed it down a little bit in terms of a band.
Very specific in terms of what you wanted.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, again, you know, like there was no precedence beforehand of like any stargazing of any. Now I'm going to use the word astro-tourism, and that's now where we're at. And I've realized that that's the pathway that we're going down. It's not glamping, it's astro-tourism. And he was just going off, well, we want to be close enough to Sydney metropolitan area, but also far enough to make sure that we're away from light pollution. So that 2 to 4 hour band from Sydney was kind of where we were at. And, you know, we went to a place called Coonabarabran, which is Australia's home of astronomy. Phenomenal place. Like we have the Sighting Observatory over there, and the Warrabungles National Park is like just some of the most breathtaking scenery you're ever likely to find, right? So the place was amazing, and really was considering that, but it was 6 hours away from Sydney.
Got it.
And not knowing anything about how we would potentially resonate with guests. I mean, who would drive? You know, would we have a one-night stay? Like, who would drive 6 hours to experience that? So as luck would have it, and, you know, as I keep frequently saying, the glamping gods just smiled down upon us.
Astro-tourism gods, right?
Astro-tourism gods now, yeah. Previously glamping gods. Well done, Jeff. You're listening. Yeah, A+ to you. And so, yeah, just ended up being lucky enough to come across Capertee Valley. Fatefully, again, it was actually like when I just realized that Coonabarabran wasn't going to work, even though it was spectacular because of that distance. And then, yeah, was going down the Golden Highway, coming through Castlereagh Highway, was like looking at my Google Maps, and then I just saw these dramatic contour lines, which indicated that there would be some sort of a topographical change there that would be pretty drastic. And so drove into the valley, went through Glen Davis Road, and then these tall cliffs just started opening up, and I was like, holy shit.
I've got
this
it.
is amazing. And I remember the song that was playing on my Spotify as well.
Yep.
It was Heroin by John Bryan. And it was just like, sun was just starting to set in the right way. I'm like, yeah, this is the location. So it kind of made it a bit easy. And then, you know, as soon as yep, this is it. Yeah, started talking to real estate agents, started like doing letter drops to the residents down here, like, you know, again, bought some additional maps, was like looking at driving through as many streets that we could legally and illegally go down. I'm sure we did a lot of trespassing, even unknowingly. But yeah,
this is recorded, by the way. So
yeah, I know. So if anybody wants to launch, you know, legal action for trespassing, yeah, they've got ammunition now.
Just make sure you don't mention the roads.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. But yeah, so it was a matter of prospecting and just yeah, doing letter drops.
I love it. I feel the energy from you, mate. It's so vivid what you're describing to me. It's as though I'm there with you. Heroin. Yes.
The song. Like, yeah.
Feel free to sing it if you want.
We won't do that.
Okay.
I'll send you the link, and you can just underscore the podcast with it. It'll be yeah, it'll be amazing.
Yeah, love it. Wow. And so you sort of just, it was a love at first sight, in a sense.
Well, you know, without getting too hokey pokey about it all, like it just when it speaks to you, it speaks to you. Like
you just know.
Well, yeah, the sites that we were picking as well, like, I mean, we've got 3 tents at the moment. Just, yeah, like you sit there at a particular spot and you're like, this is it. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate it, you know, sometimes we don't listen to what your gut is telling you. And yeah, it was just kind of, I hate to say it, but in a way it was easy.
I love it. But obviously you and I, we've known each other quite some time now, and this is not an overnight success, so to speak. You've been working on other projects to get to this point, so to speak. Let's sort of hold that forward. You mentioned the tents. The design is actually very interesting. Who came up with
very interesting is open-ended, Jeff. Is that a compliment or a non-pliment?
I think looking at it, you know, thinking deeply,
yeah,
it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
With what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of wondering, was it always like that? Or was it more the end iteration to get there?
Well, very good question, actually. So I think the challenge of how our planning laws work and how architecture and how that whole process works is that you need to have definitive decisions made really early on, right? Without actually knowing too much about it. And I was like, well, as you'd know, in the tech space, we have the concept of the MVP from the lean startup, right? Which is all about iterations and how do you adjust and how do you build upon, you know, from the feedback that you get. So there was an idea of just, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if you were in an open field away from everyone else, you felt safe on this decking, you know, so you'd know what you're stepping on, and just being able to like sleep in comfort. So that was the genesis of like where it all started from. And then the iterations that took on from that were from guest learnings and from just experimenting with things. So luckily by having, you know, 3 tents, we were able to experiment with various other features, and just sometimes deducting things and sometimes adding things, and getting a bit of an idea of where it's at, but all inspired by the tech world, right? And so now with the next phase that we're going into, and building additional tents, which is like incredibly exciting, and it feels like it's been a long time in the making. It's going to be yet another significant iteration, implementing a whole lot of those learnings that now you know, might be a little bit more difficult to put in this current concept. So kind of like wiping the slate clean and going, okay, what can we do now to take this experience to the next level?
Can you share? I'm happy, you know, feel free to keep it under wraps, but you've really got me excited. I'm curious. What do you...
I could talk about it, but it's more about seeing it. And so, yeah, without like, you know, wanting to seem evasive, it's not about that. It really is about like just how do you communicate this to do it justice, but it is really about creating, you know, more, bringing the element of, say, for example, the real camping spirit, right?
Got it.
So I think, and this is just my observation, the challenge with glamping, even though we're in astro-tourism, but the challenge of glamping is that it's such an undefined industry, and interpretations are so varied. So it hasn't found term yet. You know how you go to a motel and you go like, well,
it's very defined.
You're going to have your Bible in the bedside table. You're going to have a TV. You're going to have a very loud, you know, minibar fridge and all of these things, and the dry Arnott's biscuits. You know, so it's like you pretty much know exactly what I'm talking about, because it describes pretty much every single motel that goes between, you know, $60 to about $190, $200, pretty much anywhere in Australia. So it's hard to kind of like, you know, mess around with that, and then guess expectations are there. So whereas with now, you know, the industry is not called so much glamping anymore, it's unique stays. And so there is so much interpretation that is coming into it, which is the exciting part, but also can be somewhere where you could fall short depending on, what the expectations of the guests are and how good you are with communicating what it's all about. So I think, moving where our interpretation of this experience is the spirit of camping with luxuries, right? So what we really want to hone in on a whole lot more is like, well, how do you cook in a camping setting where, you've got amazing skillets, you've got various other elements that you can employ to, really create takeaway experiences for guests, something that they can remember doing, imagine making nachos pretty much like from scratch in a camp setting, you'd remember that, right? And as we've learned, the the spectrum of people's experiences are so broad that it defies belief. We literally had a journalist once that came from overseas, and we were showing her around, and she's 28 years old at that point, and she points to a fire pit and goes, "What's that?" And we're like, "Oh, it's a fire pit." She goes, "What do you do with that?" We're like, "Well, we light a fire in there."
Yeah.
And she's like, "You light a fire?" So we lit a fire for her. It was actually the first time that she saw a live fire.
Wow.
And so for us, we go, that is something that is unheard of, but that is the reality of so many people and actually so many of our guests. So creating an experience where you can create a safe experience, but you can onboard them and allow them to, have this input and create things for themselves, and going all the way to, people that have been camping since before I was born, and how do you not, patronize them with instructions and with going, this is how you do it, but allow them to get what they want out of the experience. It presents its own challenges, and like, how do you make sure everything is done safely as well, where things don't get out of hand?
So in a sense, Sonny, you're trying to be innovative. You want to enhance the camping sort of spirit into your accommodation, but at the same time, you need to meet the expectations of your customers, but also pay homage to what the fundamental concept is. And you need to find how it all sort of balances in a way.
Well, yeah, because I think you can
Is that
push
right?
Well, it is. There is. I don't think there is any more succinct way to define it than what you have mentioned. So it is about like, how do you go down a slightly different pathway that's still not alien to people, but it is taking them down a different direction. That is something that's a bit different. And I think like, what we have here, we're in Australia, we're blessed with having so much space, right? In so many countries you aren't. And so you understand why, when people buy a 10-acre block in the UK, they kind of have to fulfill that resort style model, which is a very known structure in the accommodation industry. And so they just replicate that, right? Even with the glamping setup. But what we really wanted to do, when partly through naivety, was we just wanted to feel like we're the only people in the mountains. So by having this space and having so much land around us and access to, you're able to create a very different experience by having structures set so far apart. And so you don't actually need to go and, go around a communal fire. It's about you and your partner. And it creates a whole different array of possibilities with what you can do with that. So it is furthering down on that. And, it is something that really resonates with our guests, and something that they really appreciate, that it's not, having 12 bubble tents right next to each other and you can hear somebody snore next door. Like, you can literally play your music as loudly as you like and no one will hear you. So it's like, what does that do? When you're out in the country and you can be that in tune with Mother Nature and that like free in loosening your inhibitions.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so your approach going forward, are you looking to even push the envelope a bit more? I know you talked a lot about, expectations, not taking people along a journey which is too outside of the comfort zone, because therefore the gap of the experience is too much. Have you thought about creating a concept or a sort of a functional design change which would really be out there? Or are you still leaning towards that lean startup sort of thing where you're very much utilizing the feedback loop
Yeah.
and then implementing?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And there is no definitive process that I can tell you that I'm doing. Sometimes I feel like I'm reverting in certain ideas, and sometimes I feel like certain ideas are being extended upon. So, yeah, there is, it's kind of a mishmash of a whole lot of different processes that we're undergoing. So even, for example, like sun shields that we have for our tents, right? I think we're on our 7th iteration in terms of trying out different fabrics, different straps, something that's going to be not too heavy, but not too light. So it's fragile. And so it's going to serve its purpose, right? And then I've got about 30 of those experiments happening at the same time, with like day beds, with like kitchens, with like all of these different things, you know. So there's a whole lot of different, I guess, experiments or learnings that are happening at the
Limitations
same
and
time.
combinations that you can do.
100%. So I think it does, you know, sometimes you feel a little bit lazy. You're like, I've got 3 structures, but I feel so overworked and like, you know, my head's everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think that's really what it takes to create something that's really going to resonate, you know. And the 2 pieces of feedback that we get most that we get most frequently from guests is that pictures don't do it justice, and that we've thought of everything. So it's a really great place to be at, but there is also so much more work to be done, and so many more possibilities of you know, taking something that's already very good to something that's even better. So I think that journey and that you know, I feel like I'm able to play, you know. It's about, I've been thinking about it a fair bit, you know, like I come from a production background and a storytelling background, and that's really something.
It's very pathetic.
But it's very, like, we are creating stories here as well.
Yeah, you are.
And so, like, you know, when people come and propose to their partner here, like, and we have at least 1 proposal a week, as far as I'm aware, you know, that is disclosed. And so far we have 100% strike rate, because no one's been pushed off the cliff yet. So it's like the greatest compliment you can get, you know, that you play a small part in somebody's eternal memories. So it's amazing, you know. We don't take that for granted. Like, it's just it really hits you in the feels every time it happens. So being able to create experiences around that, and, you know, to extend upon it, even, like, it's joy, you know, like, and it's really something that just energizes you.
I can feel the joy from your voice.
Yeah, great. Can you feel the tiresome, the lack of sleep as well?
You've always been this very positive, optimistic guy, and I'm going to say it again. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, man.
You know, we talk about achievement. You know, this is some of the things that you raised to me previously. I was going to say to you, is there an end goal with this sort of venture, right? But from what I'm hearing from you, correct if I'm wrong, this is something that you can constantly improve on. Is that correct? Or
well, so John Maxwell, who's a leadership authority, I guess he marks the distinct difference between being growth conscious versus goal conscious, right?
Growth conscious versus what, sorry?
Goal conscious.
Gold.
Yeah, goal as in
goal conscious,
reaching a target. Yeah, because like, you know, there is a well-known challenge that astronauts experience once they've been to the moon, and they come back and they're in their mid-30s, and then it's like, well, what next? You've achieved your goal. You see this with Olympic athletes as well. They've won a swag of gold medals, you know, like Fran Hackett, like, there's a few of them that have really met those challenges of going like, well, what next? But if you are growth conscious, there's always ways to be able to improve it, and you'll never get there, right? So I think like early on, I've kind of, it's really resonated with me when I heard it first from John Maxwell. But it's something that I feel there is always different ways of being able to extend upon things and improve them. But I also think, and here is where the challenge can also lie, is like sometimes when things work, the greatest challenge is don't screw it up, don't touch it. Sometimes it's fine. Like you look at Facebook and they've got like 1,400 UX designers, and they're constantly doing stuff. And it's like, well, sometimes, just leave it be. It's working. It's fine. It doesn't need
we need
additional
jobs.
iterations.
We need jobs, Sonny.
We need jobs, like employment jobs or the Steve jobs.
What I'm trying to say is that this constant need to iterate, it creates jobs for people, so to speak.
Well, absolutely. I had a friend who was working at MSN once, and at that time they had about 400 employees, and I'm like, 400 employees to like run a website, right? And I don't mean to demean it, because there is a whole lot of work that we don't, even though I worked in the sector, like, but still, what does an engineer do? And like, there is actually a fair bit to do. But he goes, yeah, it could be run by 40 people, no problem, right? So you go, sometimes there is that idea of like, you can over-iterate too much as well, and you really can strangle the stuff that's already good, like, when a new leadership team comes in, they want to put their own spin on it. And sometimes they just wipe the slate a little bit too clean without knowing what they're actually wiping away. So I think that definitely comes through maturity and experience, and knowing yourself, like to go, well, what are the things that are really moving the needle here? And that is, that lies at its core, what is the sacred thing that you can still touch it, but just be mindful.
Interesting. And you mentioned team. Do you have a strong team around you, Sonny?
Yep, I do. That extends to consultants, advisors, mentors, staff. I do, but also that is my next goal with this organization, and even as an entrepreneur, really fostering something that is a culture and something that we can really, that's really individual to us. I know we were talking, I'm sure you won't mind me sharing this, but when we were talking just before the podcast about there is so much tropism or cliche things that are involved in organizations of like, well, we're out there to change the world by doing X, Y, and Z, right? And like how the values are disconnected from everyday actions, and like that's been my experience in organizations as well. And with the consultant that I've been working with, she asked me that. She was like, well, what is your mission statement? And I'm like, oh, Kate, to be honest with you, like I find it all a little bit naff, and I've realized that it is because of that. But something that she's helped with, and like just getting my head stuck in that in that space now, because I think that is the greatest challenge of a business. Actually, it is the people and the culture, and how do you cultivate that? But how do you actually live those values that aren't like
cliche,
that aren't cliched, but how do you actually do it? And it comes through buying into it. And like the famous examples of it are Zappos, Atlassian, and even Chick-fil-A, like if you look at those examples and how they actually do that, and, it's not for everyone, but it is the way that they do it, so it's really interesting, the examples when you look at how it is possible to achieve that, and what it actually takes.
So what do you want to create for your people?
In terms of my staff or customers, or I guess everyone?
You tell me. Is there something that's sort of quite holistic that would bring it all together? You made a very good point. Is this stuff very corporate-y, so to speak? Do I actually need it?
Look, so it's still a work in progress, but I think people, this whole idea of what our guests get from this experience, and what we've set out to achieve is like just recharging your batteries and reconnecting with your partner, and being able to just see a change of wallpaper, be a part of nature. The Japanese have a term for it. It's called forest bathing, right? Where stressed workers are actually prescribed by doctors. They say you need to go into the forest for 3 days. Here's a medical certificate, present that to your boss, and they understand that concept, right? We don't know what it does to us, but it does do something to us. So it is these intrinsic benefits, and I think like staff as well, it's not necessarily that people are necessarily feel rewarded when they've got the highest salary or the best benefits, but it is a matter of well, how do I feel worthwhile, and how do I feel like I'm doing something that's interesting and rewarding, and that is fun, even and that I'm not feeling like I'm being stiffed from a money perspective, but that it's enough. We've chatted about this, and it is applied that you're going through, and that every person goes through at various different levels of like, well, what is this all about, and I think
all do. We all do.
Yeah. So it is it is an endeavor like that. I'm trying out a few different things, but now that we're in a process of growth, and that finally I feel like the shackles have been that I've been liberated from the shackles. Now is the time to actually be looking at bringing these excellent people on board that I can actually grow the organization with, and that can grow with the organization. So it is about like having amazing staff that are treated like guests as well, and that have that service at heart type of attitude, but also like identifying it right from the start, and really and again, this is a work in progress. I haven't I've been playing around with it a little bit, but it really is about like, what do you stand for, and then who are your tribe? And it's not everyone, and I think like people can sometimes get lost in the idea of going like, well, it needs to be for everyone, and no, there is magic in niches, and it's much better to be something for someone rather than for everyone. So and I think that goes with staff as well.
Brilliant. And it's very much a journey, isn't it, for you, isn't it? So you're very much growth focused, and you made a very good point about the whole, if you're goal focused, you essentially have to get back on the hedonic treadmill, so to speak, and find that next goal. But if you're growth focused, there's that sort of deeper drive there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, mate, look, and that is the plight, but that the irony of life is that sometimes it'll smack you around the head when you least expect it, and so then you've got to readjust and chart a different course, right? So who knows what can happen? Like, I mean, if so I was bitching and complaining to a supplier once, just having a very liberal conversation with her once, and I was like, like I found myself thinking the other day, like, well, we had a 1 in 100 year drought, right? Followed by like a 1 in 100 year fire event, followed by a 1 in 100 year flood event, followed by a once in a 40 year hailstorm, followed by a once in a 20 year something. It was like yet another thing that happened as well, and there was also a once in a generation mouse plague, like all back to back, right? And so you go, what's next? And she goes, and I was like, the only thing that we haven't had was a volcano and a cyclone. And she goes, but Sonny, you're wrong. I'm like, why is that, Carol? And she goes, well, you haven't had a tsunami yet either. And literally 1 week after that, there was a small, like I think it was like a 4 magnitude earthquake in Lithgow, and then there was a tornado that happened in Peel, which was about 40 kilometers away from us. So it was
you got to be careful what you say.
I think so. I could be jinxing it, but it all goes to a point of just going like, these things are unpredictable. That's just Mother Nature, like as we're now experiencing the extremities of it. But you just never know what life is going to throw at you. So ironically enough, I think like by just kind of sitting in but that is it. Like if you accept it, if you accept the uncertainty and you learn to live with it and you actually learn to embrace it, it's okay to not know. It's okay to be uncertain.
Yeah.
And I think if you truly accept it, you're going to feel vulnerable and naked, but that is what it's about. And again, because I know this
let go. You just need to let go.
Yeah, but I know that this is particularly, relevant for like the conversations that we've had. But I heard on a Tim Ferriss podcast about a book that Mark Manson was particularly inspired by when he wrote his book with a lot of expletives, the second book, but he was inspired by Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. Denial of Death. I'll send you these. I mean, that it is just amazing. So it was written by Ernest Becker, who was I think he was a sociology professor, and he was actually dying of terminal cancer, and this was his like magnum opus, his like life work, and he was only about, I think, like early 30s, maybe even late 20s. And he studied the great psychologist of his time, and he was like, just really going through his existential crisis. And it's very like academic and really big, heavy ideas, and you really needed to go through it a few times. But it was amazing how it came to a point of just like, let go. It's okay not to know. That fundamentally, at its essence, that was my great big takeaway. And then, Tim Ferriss's one of his great big recommendations is awareness. Oh God, he's evading me right now, but he's a Jesuit priest, Anthony de Mello, that said the same thing, but in a very poetic way. And so I think like it's really timely, particularly, I don't know what it is, but I've got so many friends, that are around our age. And I think there's certain biology, societal expectations, et cetera, that just bring you to this point where you need this material and you need some questions answered. And for me, when I needed that, it was super beneficial. And so just going, I can't control it all. Things are going to get thrown my way. I'm going to do my best to be resilient, do my best to like ride it out, but also I'm not Superman, and it's okay also to, put my hand up, ask for help, or do what I need to do in order to make sure I'm going to be okay, So like, yeah, as much as this is super exciting, and I'm like really excited by the prospects of what this really can be, like, who knows what's going to happen in the next year or two or 10 that might deviate something, and, better opportunity might come along, or it just might be not having any more fun with it.
So essentially you're very much in the moment, having fun.
I try to be. I don't always succeed, but I try to be. Yeah.
And what sort of is there something that sort of keeps you up at night, or because I know sometimes from our conversations, and I'm sure the listeners will probably realize these guys are always very happy, they're always very cheerful. I think we are. Is there something that sort of keeps you up at night sometimes?
Yeah, insomnia.
Wow.
So yeah. But it's again something that I've just been experiencing ever since I was 18. And it was frustrating at first, but I actually just go like, that is when I get my best ideas. And, like, again, that idea of just accept it. And now it's
just let it flow.
Yeah. So if I feel like watching YouTube conspiracy videos, I will do that. If I feel like reading, I will do that. If I feel like getting up and doing a workout at like 2 or 3 in the morning,
why not?
Very rarely do that, but I'll do that. So it's like, as opposed to resisting it, just like accept that it's there. Sometimes I sleep through, but 90% of the time I'm just a notoriously bad sleeper. So
but you're just letting it be.
That's right.
Is it very much you being you and understanding you better?
I just think it's, so often we fight the discomfort, and I feel like it's almost not okay to be uncomfortable. We so expect, everything
You need to be
be.
perfect. You need to be rosy. You need to be positive every day. But it's like what you said, right? Sometimes you can be upset. You just need to be you, hey?
Well, I think just accept where you're at, and it's like, well, what am I going to when you're stretched? You learn, and I think we're going to face discomfort in life. Life is almost defined by discomfort, and how much of it we're prepared to really put up with. So I think I just my thinking is, for me anyway, is like, don't fight it. Like, make it useful. Learn something from it if you can.
Hmm. You mentioned before about there was a time when you needed to have those reminders about awareness, about staying in a moment. If you don't mind me sharing, what brought that on? Was there a sort of period in your life where you sort of feeling that you were slipping back, you were unsure, or what was the driver for you to grow in this sort of area?
Yeah, it was actually a confluence of pretty much like uh, a lot of things just going south at exactly the same time, and like my worst fears being realized right now. I won't go into it publicly, just because I don't need to, but it is
Hmm.
like, I've shared this with the people that are close to me, but it is just like when it was all happening at the same time, I was like, okay, I haven't experienced anything like this before. And it is just something that now's the time to like just preserve myself and just make sure that I'm really looking after myself. And that's when those books really resonated with me, and just going like, okay, cool, don't fight it, just swim downstream, whatever happens
Be
happens.
be water, my friend.
Yeah, well
I
said.
like I like it. I like it. And
Yeah.
what's the inspiration going forward for you?
um Well, man, I'm having fun. Like it's just something that's super exciting, like
Hmm.
I've got guests. Like literally 2 weeks ago, there was a guest that checked into one of the tents, and I was the caretaker that day, and he called me up and he was like, Sonny, man, like I just wanted to say, like, this is freaking awesome, right? Like, and he was just like, you just heard it in his voice, and he was like, he could have called his mother, he could have called his best friend, he
You-
could have called like all of these people, but he like, called me like to thank me and us, for like what he's seeing and how amazing it was. And I just go like, oh, that is awesome, man. Like that is so cool, that to be able to play a part in that, and continue to expand upon that, and create wacky different experiences that
Love it.
we can try to do. Because yeah, again, man, like, there's so many ways of being able to earn money, but it's like if you are doing it where it just really resonates, and you're able to create something that's kind of, that's fulfilling. I think that's ultimately what drives me. And
Beautiful.
we were doing stargazing experiences as well just before the lockdowns, and so there's a lot of experimentation and iterations that went into that as well. But the things that are lined up in that sphere, like after our next phase of development, like that is something also that I just feel is going to be tremendously rewarding, just to be able to play around with it and create some magic there.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, like there've been many guests. What has been the most odd request from one of your guests? And how did you sort of approach it?
Oh, oddest guess.
Odd request, sorry. Odd request, sorry. On odd request.
Yeah. What's I know
So,
what's
something that
television.
was really out of the blue. And you're like, you know what? Okay, I'll get it done for you.
Well, I don't know whether it was like said half through jest and half in seriousness, but somebody needed a bedfellow once. So there was that.
Did you execute?
Mate, look, I'd like to think I'm accommodating, but yeah, you've got to draw the line at a certain point. So yeah. But I think, yeah, mostly like what I was saying before, it is sometimes you get I think the magic of it and the challenge of it is that everyone wants to get something different out of the experience, right? And how do you identify what that is, and how do you accommodate that wherever possible? And so it is amazing actually to see guests from various different backgrounds, what their expectations might be, and you start to see correlations, and you start to see something that resonates a whole lot more, and then you start to also see like who might need a little bit more attention. We call them high touch guests. Some that might need a little bit more guidance in terms of being able to just get their head around with where we're at. So I would say, like, yeah, most guests, even if it is a bit of an unusual request, like it really, like at the heart of it, you can tell where it comes from, so it doesn't make it that strange.
And you know what's beautiful? It seems like you're still very much on the front line.
Yeah. Look,
you're not sitting back. You're very much out there. You're listening to your customers. It's you. They call you. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really like it does come from that tech background, and I think like we're at such an advantage having been raised in that world, like professionally speaking, and having that idea of iteration and guests first, and how do you make things easy for them, and how do you question assumptions? Why is that there? Just because everyone else does it doesn't mean that it should be done, right? And so by having those elements at the forefront, as opposed to it becoming, I'm at the coalface of it and this is so exhausting, and sometimes it is, I'll admit.
It will be, yeah.
But actually, like being able to still clean, it's part of that UX experience, right? So you see, like, for example, it was a cold night, but the guest didn't use the blankets. Like, why did they not use the blankets? I know we've got the electric blankets, but is it maybe that they didn't find it, right? So what happens if you position it at a different spot? Okay, everyone's using it, right?
I love the little detail there.
Yeah, so that is something that like we're constantly iterating and changing around, and you're just going deeper than what you actually see or what you even hear from guests, So I'd say, like, but that's what's required, I think just really immersing yourself in that, and it comes with time and it comes with experiences, and so you really are able to glean a whole lot more insight into where it's at. Because I think also, again, the experience is different, and it can be challenging for certain people, but as opposed to having dynamo labels everywhere, like here's where the microwave is, or here's where that is, or how do you just guide them in that experience without making them feel like they're not welcome there? Yeah, or dumb, because again, you can go to motels and like there's a whole shelf of instructions for absolutely
this is where it is,
everything that's there. That's right. Checkout is by this. If it's not done by then, like this is what happens. And that's not what hospitality is about. I mean, I think you want to make sure that everyone's got as much of an idea of expectations and and clarity around that, but also like guiding the experience. It's it's challenging but rewarding.
Love it. And
yeah.
You mentioned weddings. I'm sure there's anniversaries. Has there been an experience from one of your guests that has really resonated with you? It could be, for example, a wedding from a couple from overseas who wanted you to create something that was absolutely surreal. Has there been one sort of guest experience that really just stays on your mind?
Yeah, look, so I mean, again, we do things a little bit differently. Like we don't see 99% of our guests. And so, but because we want them to come to a site and feel like it's theirs, it's their mountain for the time that they're there, right? And we're always at hand. We've got, we send them text messages when they arrive, and like, if things get a little bit windy, because again, part of that UX experience is like, that after having received the feedback, when guests say like, oh, I was a little bit worried about that, you're like, okay, like then if one person is worried, there'll probably be another 10, that haven't
Just
expressed that they're
imagine, I
worried
got a
about it.
text from Bubble 10 Australia saying, hey guys, winds are picking up a bit, but it's okay. It'll clear.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And so we've got a little video of just going, this is how the tents are bolted in, this is how they're rated, like this is, but if you're feeling unsafe, like feel free to just call us. You've got a place to come up here, or just, give us a bell. And so those elements, like they really, really appreciate. So I guess to answer your question in terms of, have there been any really magical experiences? Like, I mean, we've had, guests that have, it was their first time away from kids in 8 years, and like they've that was their first time to actually be able to reconnect. So like we don't necessarily like aren't there to see it, but it's not about us, it's about them. But like I can just tell, like, from when they send us feedback that what it actually has meant for them, and where they've come from, and what it's inspired in them. So yeah, I don't have any juicy ones that spring to mind.
It's not
I can
about
share
that, buddy,
with
is
you.
it? It's like what you said, right? 99% of the time, from what I'm understanding, the best experience for your guests is when they don't even know that they're with Bubble 10 Australia, because that mountain, like you said, is for them at that point in time. And
That's right.
You've designed it in a way where everything is seamless.
As much as possible. And we're constantly iterating. Like even just last week, we, three small changes were made, just again, when the penny lands for us, and a guest will say something, and it's like, as much as we know the experience right now, like we always have got so much more to learn, and so much more to do. So it's like, yeah, that is the endeavor, like we'll never get there. We'll always be changing things, and hopefully be improving it, as opposed to, going in the reverse direction.
Love it. You know what's funny, so we had a chat prior to this podcast for about 20 minutes. I can't believe it. Now it's been over 1.5 hours, which is crazy, right? But that's just you and I in terms of our conversations, right?
That's right.
What has this business done for you?
For
you, let's take everything aside. Let's remove the hat of you as the main man for Bubble 10 Australia.
Okay.
What has this done for you?
Well, here's the main thing that it's done for me. It's made me feel like I'm not crazy. Okay. Yeah. So, like various other businesses that I've worked on, or startups in the past, it's, there've been some wacky ideas, unconventional, conventional ideas. And, I've gone from terrific failures to like even, moderate success. But I think like when this started to really resonate, and people saw value within it, I just went like, oh, okay, that was an idea that, again, it's just twisting the knob a little bit, right? Just to a different direction, and applying it to something a little bit different. So I think that's the main takeaway, is that like, yeah, it's nothing personal. We tend to crucify ourselves when things don't work, and we blame ourselves personally, that you're inadequate for this reason or that reason. But I think like the fact that so many people see value in this place, like they don't know that Sonny's, one of the people behind it. They don't give a shit, it shouldn't be about that. So it's like, if I'm prepared to, yeah, so if I'm prepared to crucify myself of, the failures, why not glorify the successes? And I think you learn a little bit of humility in that regard, that, and hopefully that is something that you can continue to take away with you, because we're so quick to like really get down on ourselves and beat ourselves up if something doesn't resonate. But it actually, what it is it's a simple, cold, hard fact. It's it resonates with the market. It's as simple as that. Some ideas don't, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're a shit person.
And it comes back to the fact of like what you shared, just let it go.
That's it. So I think that's what it's done, like, well, the most significant thing that it's done that I can think of that would actually be of value to anybody watching. And it's liberating, I mean, again, I feel like I've never been challenged as much as I have, like with everything that's been going on. But it's, it's been a really good realization. And you go also, I know talking about it a little bit beforehand, but like, when you go like, I'm not crazy. I can like apply, the learnings from here and from the previous failures and put it towards something different.
Yeah.
You go, what's to say that there isn't another industry that you can do it to, or, you have a crack at another idea. And as long as you don't do anything catastrophic, like, put all your money into an idea without testing it out, or something that could have long-lasting impact, it's like it's all fun then, like it's experimentation and being able to challenge yourself. And how could you not enjoy that? It's amazing.
It's beautiful. And I don't want to take too much of your time, Sonny.
You're good.
Let's like what you said, let's strip everything away. And now I know you're very much in the whole growth mindset thing. And I can hear from your voice, you're very much in the moment, right? I'm very curious. In 30 years' time, where do you see yourself? Paint me a picture.
Good question.
Paint me a picture. Be as clear as you want.
Okay, well, here's another one. I'm going to sound like a little bit like a broken record. But another book that I read, Michael Scott Peck, or M. Scott Peck, he wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled, right?
Road Less Traveled, okay.
Yeah, it's got 3 phenomenal chapters. One is about God. The other one is about love. Forget what the third one is about. But I just remember, like, I read it when I was 21 or so, right? And it was the clearest definition of love that I've ever read, of somebody like trying to, encapsulate it, what it actually means. And I was so inspired by this guy that I started like, reading a lot more about him, because he wrote this in the 70s, right? When he was like a psychologist, or maybe even a psychiatrist, practicing psychiatrist at that time in his 40s. And I started like researching. This must have been like 2007, 2008. So a bit of a different time. And then it turns out that he passed away a couple of years beforehand. And he passed away, by all accounts, he went down a rabbit hole of demons and really interesting pathway. But, he was destitute, broke, estranged from his kids, and unfortunately got to a pretty dark place. And I went, if somebody that had that much clarity, that gave so much value to me, like that resonated with me so much, got to such a dark place, does that discredit him? Like, what does that do? And I really needed to ask myself that question, like about like, well, is he still a hero in the way that I perceived him to be? And I realized actually even more so, because even somebody that has so much clarity at a particular point doesn't mean he's free of what life will throw at you and where we will lead you. That life is a constant challenge for everyone, no matter what position you're at. So how that answers the question of what you've asked me is that, mate, I've got no freaking idea. I would love to be happy. I would love to be...
Are you happy now?
Yes. I would love to be giving value. I would love to be creating amazing experiences. I would love to be healthy. I would love to have an amazing family, a great circle of people around me, great employees that are prospering. I would love to do all of those things. But what's going to happen? I'm kind of just accepting of the fact that it may not be that way, even though that's what I'm aiming for.
And like what you said, let it be.
Let it be. Somebody should write a song about that.
I think that was a Beatles song, wasn't it?
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah,
let it be.
It is.
It is a Beatles song there.
Yeah.
So, Sonny, thank you very much for joining me on the Medium podcast. I know I can bring you back for episode, 252.
Mate, let's pencil
Put
it
that
in.
number out of my head.
Well, we know this one took 3 months to achieve, so we may as well just start planning it now.
Fantastic. Great to see you, Sonny.
Thank you, mate, and thank you for the opportunity. And it was so nice to be able to chat to you. I hope this was of value.